It started with laughter. The kind that bubbled out of the teachers' mouths like a slow, sneaky stream that no one noticed until it became a river. They didn't mean anything cruel by it. They were just bored with the same old routine, tired from weeks of unremarkable classes, and needed a little fun. So, when a simple woman named Clara walked into the classroom for a special music project, they couldn't resist. The joke was harmless at first. Clara had always been a quiet figure. The type who wore faded skirts and lived a modest life. Her hands rough from years of caring for her family and maintaining her home. At first glance, no one would ever suspect that Clara had the potential to change the entire school's understanding of what talent could look like. She wasn't poor, but she wasn't wealthy either. She lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and no one ever expected much from the woman who had never done anything to attract attention. The teachers, a group of well-educated, middle-aged professionals, saw her as an easy target for their joke. The class was about to begin a unit on different instruments, and one teacher, Mr. Dawson, half-jokingly pointed to Clara and said, "Why don't you come up here and play the violin for us? I bet it'd be interesting to hear you try." The others snickered softly, nodding in agreement, as though it was some kind of performance art to watch Clara fumble and struggle with something she'd never touched before. Clara's heart sank. She knew nothing about the violin. She was, after all, a woman who spent her days running errands, taking care of her aging mother, and doing laundry. But she felt an odd mixture of humiliation and curiosity. Why not? What harm could it do? With a hesitant smile, she stood up, her nerves unraveling as the class stared at her with mild amusement. She walked to the front of the room, where a shiny, unfamiliar violin awaited her on a stand. The laughter died down, replaced by an expectant silence. Clara's hands trembled as she adjusted the violin to her shoulder, the weight of it unfamiliar. The bow felt strange in her hand, but she didn't back down. "Not this time. Ready?" Mr. Dawson asked, his tone too casual. As though he were waiting for the spectacle, Gaia Clara gave a quick nod, unsure of what she was about to do. But when the bow touched the strings, something happened. The first note she played was soft squeak, like a mouse's cry, but there was a tenderness to it, a quiet vulnerability that hung in the air. The teachers exchanged glances, some still waiting for the joke to unfold, others unsure of what to make of it. And then, Clara did something that none of them could have ever predicted. She closed her eyes. Her body, stiff and unyielding at first, seemed to soften, as if the violin had begun to speak to her in a language she'd never heard before. She drew the bow again, and this time, the sound wasn't just a note, it was music. It was a voice, rich and textured, full of emotion. The bow danced over the strings in sweeping arcs, and Clara's fingers, though unsure at first, began to move with grace. Slowly, the room transformed. The teacher's smiles faltered as the music grew, turning into something far more profound than they ever expected. Clara, a woman with no formal training, was playing a melody that seemed to come from a deep well inside her. It wasn't just technical, it was raw, it was pure. The melody, simple yet intricate, stirred something in the hearts of the teachers. Their laughter faded. Some of them had always dismissed the potential of people like Clara. They believed in talent, in rigorous training, in all the things they had been taught to value. But now, they were faced with something far more powerful, human emotion translated into sound, something that could not be manufactured. It was the music of the everyday person. The kind of music that spoke to every struggle, every dream, and every unspoken hope. Clara wasn't just playing notes on a violin. She was telling the story of her life, of all the hard work, of the love she had poured into her family, of the quiet strength she had built over the years. Her playing wasn't about perfection, it was about the heart. As the final note lingered in the air, the room fell into an almost reverent silence. Clara's hands lowered from the violin, and she opened her eyes. Her face was flushed, her breath a little uneven, but she stood tall. There were no more jokes now. Just awe. Mr. Dawson, who had once made the joke, cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to recover from the moment that had just unraveled in front of him. I didn't expect that, he muttered, his voice faltering. The other teachers could only nod in agreement, all of them unsure of what to say. Clara stood there, a slight smile on her face. She had never been good at speaking and articulating her thoughts, but music was her voice. She didn't need words. The students, who had been silent witnesses to the entire event, began to clap softly. First one, then another, until the sound grew into an applause that filled the room with unexpected warmth. Clara felt her heart swell, and for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not as the simple woman who had lived her life on the sidelines, but as someone capable of creating something beautiful, something that moved people. The teachers, who had initially intended to mock her, suddenly saw Clara in a new light. They were the ones who had underestimated her, who had reduced her to a stereotype. But Clara had shattered that, showing them that talent wasn't something that could be defined by appearance or background. Talent was something that existed within the soul. It couldn't be measured by degrees or accolades, it could only be heard. After the class ended, Mr. Dawson approached her, his voice now filled with genuine admiration. Clara, I'm sorry for making a joke out of this. You're incredibly gifted. Clara smiled, a quiet but knowing smile. Sometimes, the best things come when you least expect them. That day, something shifted in the school. The teachers began to recognize the potential in every student, not just the ones with perfect grades or the best instruments, but in the quiet, unassuming ones, too. Clara's performance wasn't just a lesson in music, it was a lesson in humility, in seeing people for who they truly were, beyond the surface. And as for Clara, she walked out of that classroom not just as a simple woman, but as an artist who had found her voice, who had shown the world that sometimes greatness comes from the most unexpected places.